So in this activity, we're going to look at prototyping business models. The idea is that you need to get from a business opportunity, a growth possibility, to a business model canvas. How do you do that? Well, the way we look at it is that you need to sketch and prototype business models. You need to work more like architects and designers in general to come up with the best possible solution. Now, if you look at how business people typically address an issue like this, they really have a decision attitude. This means it's easy to come up with alternatives, but difficult to choose between them. So what does this mean? If you have A, B, and C, well, the difficult part is, well, to make an existing choice. Now, yesterday's dominant business models have expired, and in that context, a decision attitude is not enough anymore. So look at the music industry. How painfully did they learn that their business model expired, and only now they're experimenting with new ones? Take the pharmaceutical industry. Their traditional business model of blockbuster drugs expired. And take the publishing industry. They haven't yet really acted on their expired business models. They think ebooks are the solution, yet that is just a technology. What they really need to figure out are new business models. Now, what about your industry? Has it expired? Has the dominating business model expired? Well, I look at business models as a yogurt. Business models expire just like a yogurt in the fridge. So make sure that you start working on your new business models before it's too late. So deciding among existing options is not enough anymore. What you really want to do is not just pick from existing choices. You want to create alternatives. You want to create new choices. You want to design possibilities. What could be rather than just what is. And then you make a choice. Then you choose between the different options. The question, of course, is, well, how do you design business model alternatives? And that's where prototyping comes in. So what is prototyping? Basically, it's a simple process of building quick, cheap, and rough study models. Models that you can throw away, that you won't hesitate to throw away because you know they're not the final solution. So the point here is that you're going to learn about the desirability, feasibility, and viability of alternative solutions, in our case, business models. Now, one of the design professions is architecture. Frank Gehry, famous architect, he says, well, if I knew where I was going, I wouldn't do it. Architects are comfortable with the unknown and exploring possibilities until they figure out what they're really going to do. In business, we are not. So take this building by Frank Gehry, the Guggenheim Museum. Is it just heavenly inspiration that rains down on Frank Gehry and his team when they come up with a building like this? Definitely not. They do tons of study models. They do sketches, prototypes with very different materials to explore what could be. They explore alternatives, possibilities. They go down one path, they throw it away, they go down another path. And they do this with quick study models. So it's cheap enough to throw away and start over again in order to come up with the best solution. And that's something we need to learn in business. Prototype and sketch business models, strategies, value propositions, so we can come up with the best solution. And architects, they work with these prototypes until they can say, hey, this is how the design is going to look. This is the mature design. And only then do they start refining and building the final structure. That's what you want to do in business. So prototyping is not about making a refined picture of your first idea. It's about exploring alternatives, possibilities, what could be. Now you might be asking, what does that have to do with business models in my organization? It's exactly the same thing. Rather than falling in love with your first idea, what you really want to do is explore many different possibilities, alternatives, and only then will you come up with a great business model that allows you to outcompete others. So playing around with difficult questions, that's what we're talking about here. Ask yourself, could you build a business model with recurring revenues? Are you going to build a business model more based on fixed costs or variable costs? Could you transform your business into variable costs? Are you going to work with a distributed or centralized logistics? Ask yourself difficult questions. But don't just brainstorm and discuss. Remember, blah, blah, blah. Sketch out one of your ideas and then several of your ideas quickly. Okay? Use the business model canvas to prototype. Now, I like this quote by Tom Vujek, a pretty famous designer. He says, prototyping is the conversation you have with your ideas. If you don't prototype, you can't get your ideas to evolve. So designers are comfortable with this attitude of having a very messy beginning, this is the design squiggle, and only seeing the design mature over time. And they throw away a lot of ideas over time because they work with quick and rapid study models. So this is what we need to be able to do in business. Develop a design attitude. Now, designers and architects, they learn to share and present their rough models very early to gather feedback. In business, we don't feel comfortable with that. We refine our models, we make thick Excel spreadsheets, and lose a lot of time for something that we might throw away. And we won't throw it away because we fall in love with it. So take architecture. Frank Gehry, he says, I present Shrek models to make people nervous, just to understand their thinking, to understand how do I need to change the design. Would you ever do that in business? Present a business model you know you're not going to build just to get reactions? So this means you need to work with very rough models at the beginning. Early business model prototypes should take a maximum of 5 to 15 minutes. They should have very little detail because otherwise you can't do many of these prototypes. You can't explore possibilities and you won't be able to throw them away. So what are the lessons learned here? Number 1, don't just choose from existing business models. What you really want to do is design new alternatives and ask yourself what could be. Use prototypes to do so. Second point, you used to fall in love with your first models and refine them early on. Well, you know what's going to happen. You won't be able to change anymore. So what you really want to do is sketch out rough and different models to explore what could be, possibilities. The third point here, well, you used to present only final models, refined one, which you worked on for weeks. That's not the right approach. Look at designers and what they do. They make very rough prototypes to collect feedback early. They iterate and pivot towards better business models. So let me end with a quote by Pablo Picasso, who says, I begin with an idea and then it becomes something else. Designers and artists feel comfortable with that and they have a process to do so. We need to do the same thing in business. Think like a designer. Imagine what could be and prototype to learn quickly.